Kimco Realty has a long history of being focused on open-air shopping centers. Over the years, Kimco has evolved, and we've really looked at where do we want to be that has high barriers to entry. And so we looked at supply and demand across the country and came up with a strategy for our portfolio to be focused on the first-ring suburb in major metro markets. We felt like that was going to have the balance of supply and demand that would allow us to really be able to showcase the growth profile that's embedded in these shopping centers that we own and operate. And that's what we've seen thus far, is we've seen really a very strong, virtually no new supply, I think it's 10 basis points of new supply in shopping centers for the whole sector. That's the lowest of any commercial real estate sector right now under construction. And demand is quite strong when you're looking at new retailers expanding, at a pace of 2 to 1. So we're in a very good spot in terms of supply and demand. Kimco has a long and wonderful history. Milton Cooper and Marty Kimmel are our two founders. They formed Kimco with a handshake. No papers, no execution on a partnership. It was really just the start of two wonderful entrepreneurs that were looking to really create something special. And Kimco has evolved over the years. And really, when we went public in '91, Milton Cooper and Marty Kimmel were really the two of the founders of the modern REIT era, which is now over $1 trillion. Kimco really paved the way for the modern equity REIT. And it was really a testament, I think, to their vision of what could be created here with, the ability for mom and pop, everyday retail investors to own a piece of large commercial real estate endeavors that would be normally out of reach because of the purchase price being so large, where they can come in and own a share of it. So it's an exciting point to be at a point where Kimco is now a $13+ billion equity market cap REIT. And obviously the public REIT space is over $1 trillion. So the long-term fundamentals for us really are impacted by a couple major macro events. So first and foremost, we're very closely tied to the consumer. So when you look at the offering that we have, it's usually, focused on essential goods and services, and it starts with the grocery store. And then you have the merchandising around that grocery store to help drive traffic at all points during the day. And so the health and wellness of the consumer really drives the health and wellness of the retailer. And right now we're seeing, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, a very strong demand side from the retailer. The consumer is in relatively good health. That's closely tied to the employment market, where we've got, unemployment at historic lows. So the strength of the consumer that Kimco is focused on continues to be, very strong in terms of the relative health and wellness of it. Other major factors that, really impact all commercial real estate, clearly the interest environment. And so the interest rate right now, obviously, environment has had its ebbs and flows. We're trying to battle inflation, and the Fed is doing what they can to keep inflation under track towards their 2% goal. As rates start to normalize, I think that'll actually improve the really showcasing the fundamentals of the growth profile of the shopping center sector, and that is going to continue to drive, I think, the performance of the sector. So for a while, obviously, retail has gone through, I would say, some major shocks to the ecosystem. For a number of years, I was concerned about what we called shadow supply, which was not necessarily new development, but it was the shadow supply of inventory or retail square footage that could come back onto the market vacant as tenants file bankruptcy or reposition their portfolios. We've gone through, I would say, a very massive evolution of retail, where at first it was, the onset of e-commerce, and that was going to be the death of brick and mortar. Then came, COVID and a massive, issue there with obviously people being restricted on what they can do outside of their homes and what retailers were deemed essential versus non-essential and were allowed to operate. Amazingly, coming through all of those disruptions, what keeps me up at night now is not shadow supply, is not sort of like the overarching, theme of a black swan event. It's really more the fundamentals of like how strong the consumer can be for as long as they can be, and really when the development cycle comes back and how we're positioned to deal with an additional level of supply and where the portfolio is positioned. So we like to think Kimco is very unique. So we obviously are very focused on continuing the entrepreneurial aspects of Kimco. We have a very strong fundamental business. The grocery anchored shopping centers continue to perform very well. We're showing good growth from those. And then when you add on the layers of additional upside to Kimco, that's what gets us really sort of differentiated from the peer group. We have an entitlement program where we unlock the highest and best use, which today has really focused on apartments. And we've been able to entitle, close to 10,000 apartment units on our existing portfolio. Because a lot of these, parcels are really just, covered land plays in some ways. There's going to be higher density developed in a lot of these locations over time. And many times we're setting that up for 10, 20, 50 years down the line. And that's like sort of the embedded growth that we see really in Kimco over the long term. We also have our Plus business, which again, we invest in retailers that are real estate rich. Albertsons being the most famous that we just recently did, where we invested and took Albertsons public and just monetized the last shares that we owned. So over $1 billion of gain from an investment there that was just over 100 million. So pretty remarkable when you look at our track record and what we've been able to do, not only on the fundamental business of grocery anchored shopping centers, but all the upside that comes with the entrepreneurial spirit of being at Kimco.